Good morning. Thanks for being here, folks. Um, First thing we're gonna do today, I want you to take out your notebooks, piece of paper, whatever the case is, and I want you to write a short story. Only needs to be a couple sentences long. It can be about something you make up or a story you heard, what happened on TV last night, whatever the case is. Just make sure it, is structured like you think a story should be. That'll be a few minutes. Okay, now that we're done with that item, how did everybody feel about that? Was there good? Did it go well? Did you feel like you knew what you were supposed to be doing? Does everybody know what story might be? I think a good place to start with narrative story. What we're going to try to cover today is how to write a narrative, how to write something that has a beginning, middle, end, creates a sense of story. Is something that we all are, willing to hear, wanting to hear, something that is detail oriented, something that is crafted well. This will be a writing workshop, but there's some time that we need to cover what this all means. The standard that we're going to want to cover is use narrative writing to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, well-chosen details, and well-structured event sequences. I think we all, especially in this time, the 11th, 12th grade, you guys have done so much writing over your schooling careers and over the amount of time that you've been in school, that this all is probably second nature at this point. The thing about narrative, though, that is important is deciding where to start, deciding how your characters are going to move and function in the story, establishing your setting, establishing why they're there. This all is where you start. This is the building blocks that you need to have to experience and tell a good narrative. So, first off, let's start with characters, right? Characters are one of the most important pieces of storytelling. And do characters necessarily have to be creatures or people? I think that gets into a maybe a little higher minded storytelling device, but not always. The characters are going to be the ones that drive the story, and the ones that are able to speak to the different themes that are in the story. They're the ones that will help the conflict move in and out. They're the ones that really make the narrative something special. So, after character, I think another thing to focus on, another really important aspect, is setting. Setting is important because it kind of sets up where the story will take place. It's something that is really, really important to how the characters interact with each other and interact with their surroundings, and if they need to travel or if they need to stay in one place. That is what really matters to the structure of a story. And also, this gives our mind a place to be while we're thinking of this story, while we're thinking of this narrative. Gives our minds a place to kind of fixate on while we're listening to the stories and the dialogue and all that goes on between these characters. And then another thing I mentioned before is conflict. This is the thing that moves stories, moves narrative in a certain direction. Conflict can be something as simple as our main character ran out of gas and now he's got to walk his way to the gas station, but on his way he meets different people and interacts with different surroundings, and that's what makes your character get up in the morning, get off the bed, get out of the house, do whatever he or she's got to do. It's really, really important to a story. These items all come together and make a worthwhile story, something that people are interested in. Another thing that's really important to the narrative structure when you're writing a story is making sure you use solid detail. Now, you don't want to overshare, you don't want to give an overabundance of detail, but this is important. Saying that someone went to this place at this certain time is important because that certain time can affect how the rest of the story goes. They went at midnight because they didn't want to be seen by whoever, because they were sharing a secret or a small story with another character, and this could be for any number of reasons. When you're setting up detail is really important. Being able to identify green grass soaked with dew is a little better than there was grass. So this creates a place for the mind to go and for the mind to be occupied with all these details, so it fills in the picture a little better. There's no real way of skipping this process because detail helps fill out your characters, fill out your setting, helps with your conflict, and then all these things can help explain your themes. The good thing about detail is that it paints a really good picture and paints a really good place for for writers to present the ideas that they've come up with or that they've heard. Let's say you're watching a basketball game and explaining how the stadium sounded and how it felt and who was playing, and little details like someone was injured and that person was the main defender against one of the other team's major players is a really important detail because it matters in the narrative, it matters in the story, and that's what really makes a big difference in when you're telling a story. Whenever we have something ready to develop and ready to write down a narrative, one of the best things to do is to prepare your story before you start writing it. I think rough drafts are fine, but when you go to write something, you need to decide who your characters are going to be, how many there are going to be, your setting, your main conflict. These are items that are good to pick out and place before you start your actual narrative. You start your actual writing, because in this way there are great advantages because you have chosen your main points already, and that way they will all be able to fall right in line, and then all you're doing is putting that stuff together, which is just as important, but your mind is already made up about the specifics. So you're able to structure your story in a way that's interesting and that matters to the people that are going to read it. When you go to craft something like a narrative, normally the beginning has all the setup. Obviously, this is kind of how stories work. This is just the beginning sets the stage. Then as you move through, the middle is normally the biggest chunk, because this is the journey, this is beginning to end, this is the travel that needs to take place. This is the beginning of the day to the end of the day. Let's say you're writing a story about a student who has a test to take. Their story will begin with them potentially waking up that day and hopefully brushing their teeth, let's say, hopefully showering, they're coming to school, so here, let's hope, right? But then they'll be thinking about all these steps that they need to take until they have to take their test at, let's say, the end of the day. And then, so that's your middle, that's the meat of your narrative. And then the end is something that resolves all that has happened. It's a part of the story where you wrap everything up in a nice bow and say, this character accomplished what they set out to do. The setting has changed in these certain ways. The conflict was resolved. In the end, you're able to summarize and review all that has gone on in those stories, or in the story you have just written. The one thing that I think is good for us to do, though, as we talk about narrative, I think it'd be good for everybody to get into groups, 3 or 4. We've however many we've got here today, I think 16. So let's do groups of 4, and you4, so on and so forth. So get together and let's talk about narrative. Let's get together and each one of you share with each other some of your favorite stories and explain why they're your favorite stories. And I'll be going around and talking to each group individually, and I'll be able to kind of see what you're thinking and what matters to each one of you, and we'll see what narrative you've picked out that you appreciate. So go ahead and get into your groups and start. Okay, so as I've been going around, a lot of you pretty much have this. You've got the gist of what we're trying to accomplish here today. So now that you've all talked about this, take a second and everybody, each group, come up with a short story that you can read or talk about to the rest of the class. I think that'll be a positive way to get this going and get everybody involved. So go ahead and start. Okay, now that everybody is talked for a little while, I see that people have been feverishly writing about and writing their stories up. One person from each group will share what we've got. Okay, that was really great. Everybody's definitely got what we're here to accomplish today. So don't whine, but you do have some homework. We've got. I want everybody to go home and write me a page, just one page. You can type it up and email it, or you can write it down and bring it into class. These stories you won't have to share them, but I will ask tomorrow that some folks share if they're willing. But go home and write a one-page story. Use beginning, middle, end, setting, character, conflict, themes, all these items that we talked about, and present them in a story format. Beginning, middle, end. Be sure to be descriptive. Be sure to use all of the items that we covered today. And we will convene tomorrow, and hopefully some of you be willing to share your stories, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, and have a good day.